I'm doing a job for the courts. The judge deemed it necessary to sign these orders.
Is Javier here?
Yeah.
Coming this way?
Every day of the week, Montgomery County Sheriff's deputies are working to prevent domestic violence.
Somebody thought that he was a threat to himself or others. So with those allegations, that could stem into a domestic violence issue. If he's supposed to be on medication, he could easily turn on a family member or anything like that, and it could turn into a domestic related situation real quick.
Here in Montgomery County, in any given year, there are more than 5,000 911 calls relating to domestic abuse. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office is the lead agency for serving domestic violence petitions and peace orders.
Yeah, anytime that you're involved in these sort of domestic situations, it is inherently dangerous with law enforcement.
We had an individual that went to court and he was issued a protective order by a judge. And there's a clause on temporary protective orders that if you have firearms, you have to turn your firearms over to a law enforcement agency. We reached out to him, asked him if he had firearms. He said he has 2 shotguns. And you think if somebody's been alleged to have some type of domestic violence issue, you wouldn't want guns in the house with that type of person.
The Sheriff's Office has a very highly skilled group of deputies that do exceptional work. This is all they do.
He was
Retrieved 2 firearms. He was cooperative.
Yeah. And so what happens? You hang on to these now?
So what we'll do is we'll go inside, we'll write a report, document exactly what it is that we took, submit it into our property for safekeeping, and he can only get them back under a couple of conditions. 1, the actual protection order expires. 2, the protection order gets dismissed. And assuming one of those 2 things happens and he has not been charged with any type of crime that has to do with domestic violence, he can get them back. Otherwise, if he is charged and he's found guilty of any domestic violence crime, then he would be a prohibited person from getting his firearms back at all or ever.
You know, they're working on family-type violence cases, whether it's mental health or protective orders and arrest warrants. So they have become incredibly skilled with not only the negotiating part of this, the service of these orders, but have had a lot of training to understand the dynamics involved with family violence.
Domestic violence is a public health issue. It's estimated that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 10 men experience victimization by an intimate partner. Not only does domestic violence cause physical harm, it also can advance mental health issues, homelessness,
Have you ever experienced domestic violence?
and can even result in death.
Eulalio Tortle, well-armed, who was suspected of killing his ex-wife.
In Maryland, last year alone, 46 homicides, domestic violence related in Maryland. It's a lot.
Montgomery County Assistant State's Attorney Debbie Feinstein is the chief of the Family Violence Division for Montgomery County.
And I think the thing about domestic violence is that it impacts all ages, all races, all religions, gender identity, sexual orientation, all of those, any category you think, economic category, it impacts the same.
Only 1 in 23 cases of sexual or physical abuse are reported.
That's the real deal, unfortunately.
It's the Sheriff's Office, Montgomery County. How are you?
The service of these court orders is the responsibility of the deputies assigned to the Family Division at the Family Justice Center, a one-stop shop for victims of domestic abuse who are looking for assistance.
What we do here is so important because not only are we providing services to those who need it, but we're also providing community education. We're educating people about how to talk about this issue, how to reach out to someone who's in need. Because, if 1 in 3 women is experiencing this, that means that 3 out of 3 women know someone.
With the advent of the Me Too movement and the recent publicity surrounding the NFL, the issue of domestic violence has reached national consciousness. And whether it's a neighbor, coworker, or family member, many of us know a victim of domestic abuse.
People are willing to come forward and tell their story and speak up so that other people get the courage to speak up themselves. Not everyone is being attacked physically. Some people are being attacked emotionally, verbally, financially, through technology, through social media. And so, no 2 abusive situations look the same. But the core of an abusive relationship is this idea of power manipulation, and control. And so when they come here, what we tell them is, we're here for you, we support you, we believe you, and here are your options. Here's what we can do for you. Here are the different steps forward that you can take. Because when you've been controlled and manipulated for so long, part of that healing process is deciding your own path forward. And that's why we're here, to help those who need it and to educate those who know someone.
Someone like Cheryl Kravitz. Today, she lives a normal life here in Montgomery County, but that hasn't always been the case. In the 1970s, she married a man who would make her life a living nightmare.
He started by pushing, by verbal abuse, to just say, oh, it's just a one-time thing, it'll pass, but it doesn't pass. What happens with abusers, they're very, very smart, and it turned out that, he would beat me from the neck down, so I was totally black and blue from the neck down, but my face wasn't touched.
She began to ascend in her career, which made things even more difficult at home.
Well, for him, this was untenable because I was getting praise from outside sources that he wasn't getting at all. So the higher I got, within the city, the lower his self-esteem became. A couple of times, sometimes in the middle of the night, after he had passed out, I would drive myself to the Red Cross and just go in my office and just sit there and cry. But I never thought about telling anybody. I was too embarrassed.
Most acts of domestic violence are never reported. The psychological distress victims undergo is complicated by various factors that keep a woman from leaving an abusive partner. Each year, approximately 3,000 victims of domestic violence come to the Montgomery County courts seeking protection.
Gail and her beautiful children were killed by her ex-husband, the father of those children.
Lori Duker is the founder of Court Watch Montgomery, the only organization of its kind in Maryland that's collecting and analyzing data about what's happening in domestic violence courtrooms.
Maryland has a great protective order law, but where's the justice? The good news is we've got a good law. The bad news is citizens have to really get involved if we're going to make sure the courts are doing their job and giving victims of domestic violence the protection they need.
Most of these victims go to court seeking protection with no lawyer. A recent report issued by Court Watch found major differences in the way judges handle hearings for domestic violence protective orders.
I think judges need a lot more education on domestic violence. A judge recently told a victim, I think you're lying because you didn't tell me that he threatened to kill you. If I were a victim, I would remember that. Well, she wrote it down. She was more concerned about the attempted rape, and that's what she told him. She didn't have a lawyer. She didn't have an advocate. And I asked recently a judge who's been on the bench for 15 years, do you ever get training in how trauma affects testimony? The answer was no. That's just wrong.
Court Watch volunteers monitored over 1,000 protective order hearings for more than 2 years to document the need for safe visitation services. What they found led to the creation of the Safe Passage Center, which opened in 2017. The center provides a safe haven for families in distress with shared custody or child visitation rights.
Now we have a safe place where moms can know, first, that they're going to get a no-contact order, and they're going to have no contact for a full year. That is a huge difference from being ordered by the court to see your abuser every 2 weeks to exchange the children.
Really should be proud of this.
She was singing, so should you. I have been singing your praises all afternoon.
Prior to the center, to have women feeling they must fulfill their legal obligation and putting themselves at physical risk in order to do it. I'm so proud that we were able to get this done. It's one of the things, honestly, of my years in service on the county council that I am just the most delighted about, that we were able to make this happen.
And these kids who were confronted every other week with an abusive father now have a safe visit in a center with a social worker watching. It's a beautiful, beautiful place.
Statistics show that 3 women are murdered every day by an intimate partner, and that women between the ages of 18 and 34 are at the greatest risk of becoming victims of domestic violence. And statistics show abuse does not discriminate. Hannah Reed is studying at James Madison University. But while she was a student at Northwest High School, she was in an abusive relationship with another young woman.
It would just start off with her telling me not to wear leggings or tight-fitting clothes. And she would word it in a way that made sense. Like, okay, well, you're with me. Why do you need to wear clothes that show off your body? And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Checking my phone constantly. And then it would escalate to her saying, like, asking me which guy friends had I ever been attracted to them and stuff like that. It made me cut off any guy friends, even if I had never been attracted to them. And then eventually some of my girlfriends, and then I just said that at the end I only had like one friend left that I was able to even talk to. She would grab me really tight, my arms, dig her nails into me, and then she tried to choke me once, and just a lot of pushing around and like grabbing me and grabbing my wrists and stuff like that.
The Centers for Disease Control reports nearly 1.5 million high school students from across the country experience dating violence every year.
Is everything okay?
Whatever, yeah. David?
I saw him in the woods and like...
For the past 9 years, the Family Justice Center has sponsored the Choose Respect Conference, a gathering to talk about healthy relationships and learn different ways to prevent teen dating violence. Hannah Reed has been a speaker at the event.
But when you hear abusive relationships, you just think a guy punching a girl. You don't think something that starts out super loving, where two people really do care about each other, and just a lot of manipulation. It's not only bad stuff. There's a lot of good there that once you only see the good, you start to see that as bigger than the bad, when in reality, when it's that bad, you can't overweigh it with the good.
We're also in the schools doing programs for students through a program called Expect Respect, where we're doing teen dating violence prevention. All of the students get this card. They also get additional information on dating violence prevention. So the information is getting handed out everywhere and anyhow that we can. I think last year, during the course of the school year, we spoke to close to 5,000 students.
And the creation of the Family Justice Center has made it easier for victims to live safe, violence-free lives.
Essentially, when someone is seeking services at the Family Justice Center and feels safe and feels secure, they are, I think, more ready to participate in a prosecution to hold the offender accountable.
They're provided information for protective orders.
Once we're able to keep them safe, they're coming back to us because they've developed that trust and that rapport with us, and they trust us.
And everything, all the services over there, to include counseling, are free.
Cheryl Kravitz got away from her abuser, but for years she lived in fear that he would find her. In 1995, she learned he had died, but to this day, she still carries the protective order she received years before as a reminder of how far she has come. Today, she tells her story so that others know they don't have to stay in abusive relationships.
I also made a promise to myself that when I could speak publicly and help other women, I would do that. And so the minute I found out he was dead, I wrote a pretty long article for the Washingtonian, and then I wrote for the Post. And now, since that time, I've been doing a lot of speaking and writing, but I also hear from women all the time who I talk with about what their options are, because there are options.
And I share my story quite often now, and I feel a sense of peace that I'm able to.
Today, Hannah Reed volunteers at the Family Justice Center, where she uses her own experience to empower other women to make lasting change.
Because there were people telling me you need to leave, but at the end of the day, I had to make that choice for myself. I knew it was wrong. I knew I shouldn't have been in that relationship towards the end. I was like, whether or not I know it's abuse, I know that this isn't right. I know I'm not supposed to be treated this way. So, but also just that you're not alone. Like, there's so many people that I was connected with through the Family Justice Center, that ask me about what I went through so they can leave their relationships. And I'm like, it's almost empowering when you do it, because it's like, I am okay.
If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, these Montgomery County resources are available to you at no cost. Domestic violence and abuse can happen to anyone. For County Cable Montgomery, I'm Susan Kenedy.